everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Parallel Barkings. My name is Larry Backer, Woof Woof, and I'm here with my puppy.
Ariana Backer, bark bark.
Why are you barking and I'm woofing?
You asked that. I think you're really having a
I'm
dementia.
having an identity crisis here. I think
No, you asked that last time is really what I was gonna say.
Yeah. Maybe we should meow. That would be more in keeping with the times. So it's parallel barking in the form of meow.
I have to differentiate myself.
You know who we should ask?
Who?
We should ask AI.
Oh, we should. Why don't we ask
Which one do you want to ask? ChatGPT. What an odd name. We're really not chatting, we're exploiting it. But okay. And
it wants to be used.
Oh, Lord. I knew someone like that once, but they needed psychological services.
Hey, whatever floats your boat.
But anyway, that is what is bringing us to today's short discussion. And that is AI as a drafting tool, or AI as our new political dominant overlord.
As a tool. How about that?
Well, you're hopeful. I think that why have a tool when the tool can be our master? And then we don't have to fuss about it anymore. And in fact, that was a bright idea that apparently descended like the Holy Spirit in somewhere in Roman Palestine some 2,000 years ago, but now it's in Alaska. And this idea just kind of came into the head of an Alaska legislator who thought, and actually quite brilliantly, I really have to give him
yes,
a clap. This is he's getting applause here. He decided that he was going to use, he was experimenting, that he was going to use AI to write a bill, to write the draft of a bill. In this case, it doesn't really matter what the bill was. In this case, it was legalizing gambling on Alaskan ferries. And this is a story that was reported on 13 April in the Alaskan papers. And of course, it never descended down much south of Alaska, but I think it was very interesting. And it's interesting for a couple of reasons. So one is it's all a big ha 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 when you have some naughty school children writing their term papers. Less of a ha ha, but no shock when a PhD student uses it. Maybe even less of a ha ha when someone with greater authority, but now, and all of that was okay. But now what we're seeing is legislators now getting the bright idea that there's no reason for them to write these things, that in fact, if they have all the information they need, they can have ChatGPT. And of course, as a lawyer, I'm scared to death because of course, for many people who are in the legislative business, you at least want the lawyers have been the traditional wizards we put on our little lawyer language hat. And someone asked us, well, is this written in statutes or regulatory?
You have the keys. You are the gatekeeper.
It's the only way we can pay our student loans off, considering how much law school tuition is nowadays. But anyway, so so that's what it works. And now, in a sense, what he's done is, to some extent, maybe make lawyers obsolete or change their relationship. But he's done something more interesting. He's done something more interesting than that. And actually, the question is, why have legislators at all? If in fact we can have AI generate whatever bill the population likes.
This is my answer, and this is for quality assurance purposes. Yeah, we just need AI legislators and then human quality assurance.
And in fact, what we can do is, rather than elect people to a legislature, we can elect coders to a central council of coders and managers and operators of the AI.
And coding ethics, yes.
Right, and they would campaign on a series of platforms about, if you elect me, I will make sure to code or to manage AI within these normative parameters.
And your expectations. Yep.
Right. And so in a sense, what we're doing, we're kind of moving right to the end of the discussion at the beginning, and then we're gonna kind of come back. But at the end of the day, if you tease this out to its limits, it suggests really in very palpable form what you and I have discussed over the course of the last year or so, not so much that there's obsolescence, but that the nature of the technologies of AI, including in this case writing legislation, doesn't so much obsolete, it transforms the allocation of responsibility and obligation
And the
within society.
landscape of the work that we do and what people expect of our legislators, I guess.
And the language of power and authority. Because why do we elect legislators? Because they stand in our place. And what do legislators produce? They're like automakers, except they're not on they are sort of on an assembly line, but they don't produce something useful like cars. They produce something slightly more usefully esoteric, but which can have a real big bite, and that is law. So that's their widget that they're producing. But in a sense, if we have AI doing the production, and it is AI that can actually help facilitate, then what you've done is you kind of suggested that, in fact, if what we're doing in creating a legislature is creating the vessel within which representation of the popular will exists in order to manifest that will through the language that is being used to organize social relations in this country, well, we've now shifted it. Because who's actually doing that now? It's not these, I was going to use a naughty term. I'll just say it's not these people, but instead it's the people who manage, control, maintain, quality assure, assess, and hold accountable the analytics and the operations of AI systems. And again, cabining this, self-learning machines don't necessarily mean that they're going to run rampant. There is always someone in the back room who can play with the coding and who can always pull the plug. And so the question is, if that's the way we're going to do it, and you're absolutely right, there's something to be said for having a machine that is coded with the principles of language and understanding and meaning, rather than people who may or may not be distracted or who may or may use language in a corrupting kind of way to have it coded. Then where should the representatives of popular power lie with these? Again, I want to use a different word, but I use the word people.
Okay, how about where is human intervention?
Right, but not just human intervention. This is human intervention at the core of our apex delegation of power, which is within our political apparatus. And this kind of suggests, if you tease this out maybe 50 to 100 years, that what we should be doing is having people stand for election for coding, legislative coding or regulatory coding or legislative accountability or legislative assessment or legislative analytics. And that, in fact, is where a liberal democratic system may well wind up.
Well, and also AI can write the code itself, so you also have to be able to deeply understand so you're absolutely right. I think I think you're going down the right path.
Right, but AI is still the border collie, and
you're right.
There is still some person who can take the border collie and say, hey, not that, or train the border collie, and ultimately the border collie will be subject to something, and that would be popular control through election. So that's actually the most kind of out there but interesting part of this. But more interesting than this, someone is probably going to say, oh my God, they're really not doing their duty. You're going and you're giving this to some machine to do. And then the only thing,
I don't understand that argument.
Okay.
Because as we had discussed in the past, humans are the ones who have generated the code, are responsible for all of the data that had been input into the machine learning and the deep learning that has taken the time that it took for this algorithm to learn to write, these laws.
Mhm.
I would expect, like I said before, I don't expect people to rely completely on AI and just say, hey, I'm not going to look at this, completely done.
Yeah, but you're not relying on them completely. You're right. You're relying on them in a generative function. Right.
Exactly. Just
And
it
that's
makes
okay.
things go faster. It's for
Well,
efficiency.
and speed is precisely what this society needs right now.
It's okay,
Right.
and that's everybody wants to put a pause on it, and I get that.
No. I'm not talking about the machine. I'm talking about the speed at which we tend to
I'm
babble a
talking about
bunch of junk
progress.
that then becomes legally binding.
Oh,
Sometimes we work so fast that we kind of trip all over ourselves.
that's
But all
true.
right,
Okay.
let me accept everything you just said.
Do.
And now I've got a problem. And the
Okay.
problem is this. If everything you said is right, then what you're suggesting is that we are misthinking the nature of the duty of care or the responsibility of elected officials. That is, those people who are elected by the people to undertake certain duties, and that their duty is not necessarily to generate legislation, but to at least oversee it. At some point, they have to be involved, right? Otherwise, what's the point of having them other than for ribbon cutting or for acts of corruption
Well,
that
hasn't
may
that
be
always
helpful?
been the point of
Yes,
legislators?
there we go. Yes, there we go. We finally
I
got
mean,
to
I think,
yes.
isn't this the dream? Finding the collective voice of the people, and that's kind of
No.
what
Actually, the
AI
dream
is
is to get
doing.
elected so that all I have to do is kiss baby. What's the old term? Kiss babies and cut ribbons.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
what am I thinking?
Right, but that's precisely it. And so I'm thinking, well, what is so disruptive about AI in the context in which it's become a standing joke, certainly in the federal level, that legislators are now constantly in the habit of being presented with 900 to 3,000 page bits of draft statutes, which they then, in a miraculous way, will approve or disapprove in at a speed that defies the ability of a human being to actually read, much less read and comprehend this stuff. So for years, right, the legislators have been doing this. And so the question is, well, all right, so we'll concede that legislators no longer are in the business of actually drafting legislation. Someone else is being delegated. Well, if it's being delegated, why delegate it to your big lobbyist or an industry group or an NGO or someone who's giving you a lot of money so that you win your campaign? Why
That
not
the
give it to
people
a
didn't
machine?
vote
Right.
for anyway.
Give it to a machine, right? All right, so you've got that. But even if that's not the case, right, you think, well, okay, if you're not reading it, at least you've got some minimal duty of care to read it before you vote on it. But
Exactly.
apparently that's not the case either, because most of these, again, I was going to use a different word,
Oh, stop.
having to do with people who are in the business of putting on big red noses and oversized shoes in their business, but maybe they need to do it. That should be the dress code in certain legislative halls. But I won't go further with that. But you don't even have that, because instead what they do is they wait to get a call from their factional leaders, the Democratic Party faction or the Republican Party faction or the Socialist faction, whatever faction it is that you've now delegated discretionary authority to make decisions for you, and you get called and you say, vote for this bill. And you say, okay, can you put this junk in there so that I can go back? I'm not going to read it, can you put this junk in there so that I can go back to my constituents and say, look, I've gotten all this junk for you. Isn't this grand? Now you're sort of better off if you believe what I'm saying, and then I'll go ahead and vote for this. Right. And at that point, the real issue that ChatGPT or that AI programs really bring out is the problem of the duty of care, or what ought to be a duty of care of our legislators in the course of engaging with the duties, right, that they have undertaken in representing their constituents. And yet what we wind up seeing is the duty of care apparently is, what was it that there was a philosopher who said, oh yes, this is care of the self. But that is precisely the one duty.
Self-care is quite important.
It is, maintaining appropriate skin tone and just the right outfit for the cameras is absolutely essential. And it's certainly far more essential than actually worrying about what 2,000 pages of legislation actually says, because you can always blame any mess up afterwards on the evil judges, the evil administrative apparatus that just misunderstood what you did, the evil opponents who, unbeknownst to you, using really weird lawyery language, have insinuated some kind of evil stuff in it. And so again, but that's in accord with our culture too, where blame is nice and diffuse, but the opposite of blame, that is celebrating great victories, is personal, right? So we have the heroic hero, but evil is, what was the biblical expression? Yes, evil is legion. Evil is legion, but good is incarnated in the body of the legislator. And what a state of affairs that brings us. But AI doesn't make this worse. It just exposes it for the pathetic sort of reality that we have come to accept. And I guess, booyah.
I mean, and what kind of reactions did they get? I mean, I'm actually not.
Oh, quizzical. It's like, okay. Oh wow, okay, this is really cool. And here again, you've actually got, it's a little safer if you use the machine than if you rely on your lobbyist, your head contributor, your friends in the NGO sphere. The Euros like doing that more than the Americans, or your buddies in business or some other thing, which the Americans like, I think, a little better. But what it does is, at least there's actually a slightly more control on the part of the legislator, assuming that it's the legislator that then goes to the altar of this AI and actually uses their language or their words to deliver instructions about what it is that the bill should contain. It will be even worse, right? The worst of all possible worlds is all of this occurs, and then AI is generating these bills, not at the instance of the legislators, which was the case in Alaska, God bless them, but it's the usual suspects, the lobbyists, the NGO.
I thought you were going to say on its own.
No.
AI decides to
that might also be
on its own.
That might also be a relief too, because we have yet to explore the way, the whatever it is that you can corrupt, other than we've already had the discussion about it's the coders. But even worse, if it's not the legislature or the legislators that are using AI to draft this legislation, but now the laziness is now dissipating outwards to the people to whom legislative drafting has been outsourced. Or of course, I forgot the executive, because there's nothing more bracing in our system of shared governance, of governance with divided powers, than to receive the thoughts of the executive in the form of a draft piece of legislation that you'll then dutifully ooze into the legislative process. They can use these AI programs too. And
that's
so
bound to happen. I mean,
well, no, you're even more cynical than I am. I thought that was impossible.
if you build it, they will come.
If you build it, they will come, and they're coming all over the place. And this isn't a liberal democratic problem as well. I mean, rumor has it that people have been using ChatGPT in China to comply with their Communist Party lessons that are sometimes mandatory. And so rather than
Brilliant.
writing essays, they just go to ChatGPT. And all this stuff is online, more than virtually anything else. I say, hey, can you write me this essay on this stuff? And they give it off. So everyone is using
There
this.
are people who are holding down, 2, 3, 4 jobs, full-time jobs using ChatGPT.
Or whatever. I don't know what program they used in Alaska. I mean, we keep blaming poor ChatGPT. Sorry.
Oh, poor,
And,
poor,
well, I mean,
poor Sam
ChatGPT may be
Altman.
sentient now, and the next thing you know, we will be punished on the internet. Our social media accounts will be
Oh,
hacked.
you're right.
I mean, we've seen the movies. But anyway, so there we go. My last point in this, because we have been beating this poor thing. The kind of the last point, I suppose, that we can make when we're looking at this is, if in fact and this is also part of the story, if in fact the legislators can write this, then maybe, and that's what the Alaska legislator did, maybe we should ask the AI program to also draft a piece of legislation which then legislates the nature and process and scope of AI drafting of legislation.
Yes, it makes absolute sense.
It makes absolute sense. And then all we need at this point is, if this is a first stage, we can, and we certainly, and actually in a much more efficient way, we can automate dispute resolution. All we need is the data, and who knows, it may be actually a relief to automate the execution or the exercise of executive authority. So it all comes, and again, by saying all of this, we haven't really eliminated the humans from any of these three branches of government. What we've done is shifted the locus of power from its traditional holders, which are these individuals that incarnate power, to the coders. And we've changed the language,
And it's
right?
not even
The
really.
outward language is still English or text, but the real language of legislation and of policy and the like is going to be the language of coding.
It's more freeform, and the history of creating the bill and the document itself is captured perfectly and in a way that it would have never been before, which I think is interesting and extraordinary, and something that we could probably take advantage of in the future.
Right. And then last point is, of course, that when you're looking at this, what are bills if not the textual expression of a set of political choices? That's the real act of legislating.
Exactly.
Is to embrace a political choice. The bill is the text, the memorialized text of a decision that's being taken. And that goes back to the old and still unresolved debate over what is law, the intent of the legislators who decide that that's the way they want to go, or the symbolic scratchings that find themselves onto, in the old days, a piece of paper, but now onto a screen. Which is law, the text or the intention of the legislators that is then memorialized through text? And for the moment, the best AI can do is work on the text. It's not clear that they can yet control the intent, that is, the policy debates. On the other hand, there's a very thin line, and one can begin to think that, in fact, that is not only plausible, but highly likely. And where it's highly likely, and this is our subject for a future podcast, is in the shift in policymaking from qualitative and normative discussions to discussions that are grounded in descriptive and predictive analytics, which themselves are also the product of and made feasible through self-learning analytics grounded in the quantification of all kinds of information, which can then be used to both describe and predict. And by predicting, then you can experiment. And so at that point, of course, there's very little that is left to the imagination about the way in which machines can, to some extent, transform what you used to think of as the highest form of the creative work of the human being, and transform it basically into blue collar work. That is, this is all ministerial work, and that all of this stuff, then from policy to normative discussions to the drafting of text, is really now in the hands of coders. And to the extent that coders, analysts are not elected, but instead we have this kind of facade of users.
I think that's breaking it
elected.
down way too. I mean, I think that's making it too simple. I think saying that
Oh,
it's only that it's in the hands of coders. I think it's a very important thing to consider. I think coders are. I think they're extraordinarily important, but I don't think that saying that everything in the world is in their hands. I mean, I think that's a little bit careless to say, actually.
well, then in whose hands are they? I mean, you're right. You're right. And that was an oversimplification, because the coders can themselves be blue collar workers on the inside. So it is whoever it is who then can employ the coders to do. But the coders, of course, then become the site of resistance. What was that? Oh, that wonderful movie, the prequel to Star Wars, where in fact it was the coder who, over the course of 20 years, was able to build in that little coding doorway through which, in Star Wars Episode 3, which was the first one that was produced, Luke Skywalker could then toss his little laser beam or whatever it was he was to destroy the battle star.
Oh, you nerd.
Right, I am. So, coding remains critically important, but you're right, someone may be bossing the coders around. But whoever any of this architecture is, however it's peopled, it's not peopled necessarily by legislators. Woof woof.
I mean, you can't cut me off like that.
I'm not cutting you off, I'm cutting myself off. You go on.
Oh, that is something that's really important, I think. And that's something that a lot of people are worried about, that just a few large proprietary firms are taking control of the code without any input from anyone else. And so maybe we should, stop and talk about that. And that's where the debate is right now. So I don't disagree, but
in the meantime, I look forward to having someone other than people who are connected, either as staff or from the executive or lobbyists or NGOs, I don't know, or the ambassador from Neptune, be the source of the text that is hardly ever read, not clearly understood, and then foisted on all of us in the semblance of what appears to be a representative liberal democratic process. Anyway, long live AI.
Hear, hear. Thanks everyone for listening.
Woof woof.
Bark, bark. We'll catch you next time.